What is going on, guys? Uh, so today at work, I had this thought that thinking about this video, I was like, wow, this could be a series of videos. And then I thought, oh, this could be a series of videos. Uh, so the last video that I posted was like 45 minutes long and it only barely grazed the 10-minute mark. And I'm going to be honest with you. This Mike Knowles guy, oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I give him credit for being the bullshit artist that he is. He is really good at it. The logical fallacies, the straw man arguments, the false equivalencies. It's really somewhat impressive if it wasn't so repulsive. So we're going to go through the next 5 minutes, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I have the temperament to go through an entire 60-minute video. So we'll kind of take it piece by piece, but I can't guarantee it.
We're even, okay? The conservatives were tormented, the libs did the tormenting, we all did stuff, okay? And let's just forget about it, right?
Oh, I missed that part. Tormenting. Number one, I don't know what his definition of torment is, but I gotta say, the fuck your feelings crowd is sure having a lot of feelings all of a sudden.
Right? I don't think so. Tribunals, actually, is what I'm responding to that offer with. You are offering amnesty. Okay, that's interesting. I'm hearing that. I am going to respond to that with military tribunals. That's my negotiating position. Let's see maybe where. How's that sound? Justice would be a good. I digress. We're already kicked off YouTube, so we can say whatever we want. We could go on.
Oh, I'm gonna get stuck on this already. I don't want to go back, but I'm pretty sure he is referring to military tribunals for the actions of COVID. This guy is a nut job. Wow. When I went back and started playing the video, I apparently started it too late because I completely missed this part. Holy shit. What a fucking nutbag. Can you imagine suggesting military tribunals for people who enacted what? Closed schools? Had mask mandates which every single one was legally challenged and some were overturned depending on the state. Like, where do you even begin to have this sort of thought process that is your starting point? Well, I suppose if you're an extremist, I mean, I guess the extreme point is where you start from, and then you become more extreme from there. I guess we'll find out.
About the vindication of COVID conspiracy theories all night. We have barely scratched the surface.
This is where I picked up the video, so this is where I have my cited sources. Oh, and by the way, before we get started, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I actually lost my bet. He sort of cited a source, so he technically cited the source that he's reading from, but he's misrepresenting and then miscategorizing exactly what it said. So I feel like I'm kind of wrong, but kind of right. And you'll see it here in a second.
And that is just COVID. Imagine that. That is just one part of one example from just the past few years. There are so many others.
So many others.
I've got one. How
Oh,
about this crazy conspiracy theory you may have heard of that the Democrats rigged the 2020 election? Have you heard about that Looney Tune idea? The notion that the Democrats, you say, this is crazy, that the Democrats changed all of the election rules right before the election, in some cases illegally, to disadvantage Donald Trump and the Republicans and to give the Democrats an advantage.
so keep in mind a couple of things, like I said before. This guy is not a lawyer. He's never been to law school. I don't even know if he has an undergrad. If he has an undergrad, I guarantee you it's not in science. It's not in law. It's probably something that has nothing to do with his current career of carnival barking. But I digress. Let's see what illegal actions the Democrats did to fix the election.
That, we were told, was completely insane. It's the delusions of tinfoil hat-clad lunatics until the liberals themselves admitted that they had done it.
No!
They admitted it.
Shut
On
up!
February 4th, 2021,
What? They
Time
did?
magazine published an account, a very detailed account, of the way that they rigged the election. It was called
No!
The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Here's just a little sampling from that.
Holy shit, they admitted it? Oh my God, I've got to look this up, right? No, wait, let's hear what he has to say first.
Essay.
I know.
I seem
I know.
to shiver with anticipation.
In a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The handshake between business and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign. Their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits. They recruited armies of poll workers. They got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears.
Of all the things that he listed off right now, can you guess which one of those are illegal? I'll give you a hint. None of them.
They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days and weeks.
Oh my God. Fighting voter suppression laws, getting the word out there on how to vote and how to vote by mail. Spending money on what I would think would be called a political action committee, because Republicans never go to those, right? They never have coordinated campaigns between businesses like, oh, off the top of my head, I don't know, maybe Fox News. They would never work in tandem with them to support a certain candidate and advocate for them and run. He's apparently against disinformation. So I would say that they would never produce disinformation to then work with the candidate, right? And put that out there. Come on.
Just had to explain to Americans why we can't count our votes as quickly as Brazil does. You know,
Oh, no, let him go on.
as quickly as tin pot dictatorships in Latin America. No, it's perfectly normal. It just
There it is. The whole reason that dictatorships and tyrannies can call the election immediately when the polls close in their countries is because they're dictatorships. You fucking dipshit. Like, they don't actually count the votes. That's how they stay in power. That's how, like, Putin and Xi Jinping and all these tin pot tyrannies and dictatorships and theocracies across the world can call the elections like that, because they're not actually counting the votes. Like, the thing that really worries me is not this guy. He's got the freedom of speech. He can say whatever he wants. It's that Republicans uh, and I want to. It's not. Oh, I forget who the advisor was, but Reagan started initiating it with the decrease and basically total strangulation of federal funding to colleges, and which had the inverse effect of colleges then being more for profit. And I mean, if you look at how deregulation happens, like everything becomes about making that bottom dollar, right? I mean, Ivy League school or not, if you have a professor, I'm trying to think where Elizabeth Warren was teaching at one point. And I don't deny she's got the credentials to be a teacher, but because she was also in politics, she commanded something like a $500,000 plus salary for teaching, like I think it was only like one or two classes. I mean, just exorbitant fees in making the ability of average Americans who are sitting in front of this guy now unable to go to college or have the motivation to go to college. Um, and now they're listening to him and they're more likely to be susceptible to his bullshit because they didn't go to college, right? And this is not a hyperbolic statement on my side, because there are graphs. Oh, you know what? I'll pull one of those up actually that show that people who go to college and attain a higher education degree tend, I think it's like something like 65 to 70% vote Democratic, where those who don't have a college education and where high school is the highest level tend to vote Republican. And God, I wish I remember the advisor to Reagan who wrote this entire, like, how do you want to call it? I don't want to call it a white paper, but basically a proposal that the only way the Republican Party, because you could see the numbers start to dwindle leading up to the 1980s, was that, and you'd have to look at Congress and look at how Democrats had like basically a something like a 50 or 60 year hold on Congress, 50 or 60 years. And this is really when, oh, I'm going to tie these together and I'm not going to get my timelines right, but this is basically around Reagan and when Newt Gingrich started to kind of develop his niche when it came to the whole defining of elites versus regular Americans, and coupled with Reagan's idea that, you know, we need to dismantle all of the funding for, you know, that governments do to social programs to give it back to the taxpayers, the whole trickle down economics, which Bush 1 amply called voodoo economics, because that's exactly what it is. Um, and basically what you started seeing is this demonization of higher education and this idea that it wasn't necessary, it was a waste of money, and it didn't, I don't feel like it got a whole lot of traction into the 90s, but right around 2000 when Bush came in and Fox News, I want to say it was after the Iraqi invasion. Like they always leaned right, but they started to go like hard right after 2001. And so anyway, what I'm basically saying is that when it comes to people like this and Ben Shapiro and the Jordan Petersons, who all have degrees, ironically, talk to, you know, he's like in somewhere in Kentucky where there's like what, like maybe 40 people there in attendance of all different ages, even though this is Young America's Foundation, which I'm still kind of confused about. He's talking to them in a way that where most of them already probably watch, you know, Fox News or Alex Jones, or, you know, listen to Rush Limbaugh or whoever the local equivalent on the radio is. He's just feeding into this confirmation bias that they already have, and he's taking it to an extreme level. I don't know if I can actually say that's more extreme than Alex Jones. I guess we're kind of splitting hairs at that point, but I think what you get, hopefully you get what I mean, is that these people in these rural areas where, you know, higher education has been demonized or is financially out of reach for them, uh, are going to be more susceptible to this crap, right? I mean, I want to tie this into the whole Jesuit thing, but I'll do that later. It's not a Jesuit; it's a Jesuit saying, and it's about. Well, no, I'll go into it later.
It takes days and weeks to count the votes because you understand the Democrats need to figure out how many votes they need. And then once they get that number, then it's very easy to find the ballot.
Right, because Trump, who is a Democrat, called Roethlisberger, I don't really care, whatever that guy in Georgia was, and asked him to find 11,000 votes for him because Trump was a Democrat when he made that call. So this is a beautiful way of how, like, Tucker Carlson does this, Hannity does this, all the talking heads, right? The people who aren't journalists, they take whatever it is that they do or they're accused of, and they literally turn it around on the people accusing of them and say, oh, no, it's actually them. Now, while this is a technique that I gotta say, it goes back as far as human history goes, but and this is going to be Godwin's law in action, is that this is how Joseph Goebbels, whatever, the ship A Nazi propagandist for Hitler. This is there's a direct quote where he talks about this, and he basically tells Hitler, whatever people are accusing you of, just throw it back at them and say they're the ones doing it, and then arrest them, basically. So this is, so Godwin's law would say that I guess, I guess I am comparing him to Nazis. Yeah. I'm not calling him a Nazi yet, but between military tribunals and conspiracy theories and all of this, and this technique of deflecting accusations and then throwing it back without evidence at the accusers, that's got to be pretty close. I mean, if he starts advocating for liberals or any specific group to be jailed, which I would not be surprised by the end of this this speech of his, I would have to then send out a tweet to Mike Godwin with this attachment and be like, nope, you are absolutely correct.
Ballots. It's right there in black and white, folks. This is not the ravings of a madman. This is not my own theory on how things work. This is the words of the liberals themselves, published in a very mainstream liberal outlet.
Sorry. So I got really off track there, and I apologize. This is what he was referring to, and this is the one-sided source that he took. But again, he's misrepresenting what is it, a woman? Molly Ball. I don't even know who Molly Ball is. I don't know. Is she a reporter? Is she a politician? Is she a super PAC funder? Like, what? I don't know who she is. Can we find out? She's a political correspondent for Time magazine. So apparently what she wrote proves his theory of democratic or just a democratic liberal conspiracy to fix the election. Yikes. All right, let's go through this here real quick. A weird thing happened right after November 3rd election. Nothing. Yeah, because it takes time to count the votes. November 7th, when it was called, jubilation broke out and said as people thronged to the cities. Yep. Let's get to where I'm trying to get to where he started. Here we go. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of the informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. I gotta tell you right now, what CEO has reached out to left-wing activists or activist groups? Like, who are, like, we were at some of the like there's no CEOs at protests, right? Like that's not a thing you see because they have a brand that they are trying to maximize. If you saw a CEO at a protest, I'm pretty sure that CEO would be fired within less than 24 hours. But I digress, as he says. The pact was formalized in a terse little notice joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO. Again, this is a bit of conspiracy theory in and of itself, to think that the Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO somehow, I don't know, directs protests in any way whatsoever. I mean, what are they doing? Like a Twitter campaign? Reaching out to these people? Are they doing like short videos like this on some website that they have? I don't know how this is reconciled. Both sides would come to see it as sort of an implicita bargain inspired by Summer's massive, sometimes destructive, racial justice protests in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. So this is a bit of a false equivalency where you're saying the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO, which I don't even know what those acronyms are, somehow dictated a peace accord between grassroots protesters across the nation. Like, I don't even know how you would prove that. Like, how do you go and try to fact check something like that? That's weird. I honestly don't know. The handshake between businesses and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election, an extraordinary shadow effort. Was it really shadow? Dedicated not to winning the vote, interesting, but ensuring it would be free and fair, credible and uncorrupted. Notice he didn't read this part. For more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. Notice he didn't say any of that. Through much of this activity took place on the left. It was separate from the Biden campaign and cross ideological lines. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. With crucial contributions by nonpartisan and conservative actors. Again, no shit, Sherlock. The scenario, the shadow campaign, I love the use of that. Shadow campaigners were desperate to stop what was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all, a failure, the central act of democratic self-governance that has been a hallmark of America's founding. Their work touched every aspect of the election. And now this part, remember, he kind of skipped over that and went to this one. They got states to change voting systems. I don't know what voting systems they changed, and laws, and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. Okay, that's, again, because of conservatives, specifically the Conservative Accord and championed by Clarence Thomas, Citizens United allows for private entities now to donate as much cash as they want into any political action committee or donate it directly to any anyone who's campaigning, any candidate. Before, there was a harsh limit on that. But then again, kind of like with the affirmative action thing here, there was no actual injured party. It was basically through, I want to say the Federalist Society were a huge backers of this case that was basically argued and said that money is speech, that when you spend your money, that is your voice into whether or not you like something, and that shouldn't be capped. And rightfully so, people were like, this is how autocracies and tyrannies are born, is from people who are rich donating directly unfettered money, so much more money than anyone else can get. So if you have and this happens all the time. Give it like Mitch McConnell, right? Kentucky is, I think, one of the poorest states, has one of the highest levels of federal subsidiaries in terms of SNAP, Medicare, and I want to say welfare recipients. But there are a handful of people that are rich. So imagine you got 5 people that are multimillionaires, and you've got 10,000 people who make like $30,000 to $40,000 a year. These people can maybe afford to send, let's say, upwards of maybe $100 a year to Mitch McConnell, where these guys can spend tens of millions into his war coffers. When it comes time to write legislation, and we've seen this, where actual people in Congress, both the House and the Senate, have taken laws written by the lawyers of donor campaigns, didn't even switch the typeset or the letterhead, and proposed it as law. Who do you think Mitch McConnell is going to actually listen to when he starts writing these laws? The 10,000 people who donated $100, or the multimillionaires that are going to benefit from the tax breaks that he's given, that's going to give him even more money? So when they talk about shadow groups or people driving up money, remember, it's because of conservatives this is happening. And it's funny when conservatives get pissed when liberals start playing by their rules. They're like, oh, wait a minute, you can't do that, that's unethical. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, another tangent. Let's go ahead and continue on here. They successfully pressured social media companies, he said this, to take a harder line on disinformation. So by literal line of logic, Mike Knowles is for disinformation, not against it, and use data-driven strategies, to fight viral smears. Again, he thinks that's a bad thing. Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory, notice he didn't say this, from getting more traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. The untold story of the election is thousands of people in both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its foundation, says Norm Eisen, a prominent lawyer and former Obama administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats to the Board of Voter Protection Program. Oh man, there is so much to go off of here, but you know what? Fuck, we're already almost at 30 minutes. So we're going to go through this. Trump then filed 64 lawsuits alleging voter fraud. 63 of them were dismissed on the merits across multiple states. And one of them, the only one that was upheld, had to do with the distance that, what do they call those? The people who, they watch over the people who watch people counting the votes. I can't think of the terminology off my head, but the lawsuit that prevailed was simply how many feet they could be away from each other. Didn't even have to do with election fraud. They asserted that the people, vote monitors, that election monitors, because they were a few feet away, further away than what the law said, that's how election fraud happened. That part of the case was struck down, but they were like, yeah, they can be a little bit closer according to the law. 63 of his lawsuits were overturned. And keep in mind, this is, I think today, actually, Mark Meadows, I want to say, gave his deposition today in the Fulton County case against Trump. Shit, I hope I have that right. There's so many things going on. It's really hard to keep it in my head, to keep the timelines. But I want to say that actually happened today or yesterday. And this is just one of several lawsuits. And this is not a part of the federal lawsuit of Trump having classified documents that he stole, which is, a lot of people think it's Merrick Garland, but it's actually Jay Bratt, I posted about this when the story broke because people kept talking about Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland isn't the one that is seeking this case. It's Jay Bratt. Jay Bratt is the lead or has been for the last, I want to say like 30 years, has been the United States lead prosecutor on espionage cases. I want to say that of all the cases that he has brought forth to a judge where they gathered evidence and they're like, yep, this has met the bar of standard of proof, we're gonna go through with it. I want to say he has close to, if not 100% success rate. He is the one who pushed this. And if you looked under the warrant, this is a mist. It's a little, it's footnote 2 on page 3 or 4. But it basically tells the judge, we understand the outlying circumstances. And this is not verbatim, but basically it says, we understand that this is unusual for the pre-indictment stage. I know a lot of people on social media are having this emotional knee-jerk reaction because Trump, last night said he's running, or maybe it was today that he said he was running. And they're like, Merrick Garland needs to get his shit together and get him right now, blah, blah. They've been screaming about this for months. And I'm like, you don't understand that the bar for proving criminality is so high. I believe that they already have it, and they actually already have evidence to prove criminality. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten a search warrant from a federal judge. I believe that they're looking at so many different aspects of how he broke the law that they want to follow every single one before they press charges. And again, you can't, according to Department of Justice, you can't indict someone 60 days before an election. And even though Trump is not running in the midterms, he did have a lot of candidates, most of who lost, that he was supporting. So the DOJ is not going to do anything. I don't even think till like December, till like right before Christmas is when I think the indictments are going to come out. Again, sorry, long point over here, but I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit because when he talked about the emails and whatnot, I'm going to be posting several sites. I tried to find the court reporter doesn't really do lists. You have to look to, like, I could cite each one of the 63 cases. I'm like, I got to get into some Dragon's Dogma. I tried doing a Google search for it. I get a lot more of these. I tried manipulating the search variables, but there's got to be a link in one of these that'll go to each one of those. Anyway, so we're going to that. Got PolitiFact. We got the all the cited sources. Oh, there we go. There it is. I knew it. I'll put that up. Sorry, I'm going off now. But anyway, so this is what he was citing. And again, he's completely misrepresented this. He is cherry picking the juiciest parts that he can use to manipulate the, again, the confirmation bias of the people already sitting in front of him. And so he talks about this being a conspiracy theory. It's really not. You can seriously take 10 minutes and you can read about it. You can see right through his bullshit. Let's go on.
Not so much a conspiracy theory.
Oh shit, I can't. Hold on, sorry. My headset went off.
It's a confession.
Oh, it's a confession.
A conspiracy.
Oh.
Now, I suspect many people in this room could recite a litany of famous conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. I bet you could do it right.
Again, the definition of a conspiracy theory is that the theory itself is a conspiracy and untrue. Let's
off the top of your heads.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is a very famous one. The Tuskegee experiments. 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service.
That's not a conspiracy theory. That's historical fact.
Conspired with the Tuskegee Institute to create a fake medical program. The program purported to treat syphilis, but instead it administered dangerous chemicals and procedures to roughly 400 black male participants. Mm-hmm. Only in the 1970s did the government cop to this conspiracy and pay out $10 million plus lifetime health benefits to the men that it had exploited.
So how, number one, that wasn't a conspiracy theory that was proven. I want to say that the only reason that it actually they got compensation in the legal lawsuit, which I'm pretty sure I don't know how much of the compensation that the victims got, but the only reason it got to that point is because there was evidence. And again, they had the evidence. So when they went to court and they were able to prove it, they had enough evidence. And where the judge was like, and the jury, I don't know if it was a judge or jury panel, was like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. This is what happened. What they did was illegal, right? That's how evidence works. That's how the burden of proof, that's like all the videos that I have said up to this point. If you go into a court of law and I say, you know, I don't know, I'm saying my wife owes me $10,000 and we both go to court and the judge goes, okay, where's the evidence? And I go, oh, I don't have the evidence, but she can't disprove she doesn't owe me $10,000. That's not going to fly. The judge is going to dismiss it. And it's that same sort of line of thinking that got those 63 cases of Trump's bullshit election conspiracies dismissed, some with prejudice. Anyway, but that's he's trying to falsely equivocate something that he says was a conspiracy theory, which I don't know how that was, because that was pretty well documented. But again, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that the government hasn't done horrible. This is the American fucking government. I mean, we had slavery for like 250 years legally under the government. For him to say something that the government does shitty things is like saying water is wet.
How about a slightly lesser known conspiracy? This one's fairly recent too, though. The Naira testimony. Do you remember that? Does anyone remember in the room the Naira testimony? A lot of people actually don't know about this one. The Naira testimony was 1990. A 15-year-old girl using the pseudonym Naira testified before Congress that after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, Iraqi soldiers had taken Kuwaiti babies out of incubators and left them to die on the hospital room floors and watched it and sort of mocked these babies as they died. This testimony was cited countless times by the Bush White House to justify American involvement in the Gulf War. Turned out the story was completely made up.
I don't actually know what this was. The Gulf War was the first war that we were involved in my lifetime. The Cold War, I mean, you could consider that, but the whole point of the Cold War is that, again, not a single shot was fired. So I guess you could say that was the first war, but the first, like, I guess what I call real war was, you know, what they call it, Operation Desert Shield. And that I, like, granted, I didn't watch a whole lot of news, but I mean, all, like, in schools, in our civics classes and a lot of other classes like English and mass communication classes, we all watched this unfold and, like, literally had homework assignments because of it. So I've never heard of this thing. That doesn't mean it's not true. It's just something that's really kind of odd. And I tried to look it up, and I don't know if my spelling is off, but if you can find something, I don't know what this is.
And it wasn't just accidentally made up. It was made up by a PR firm that worked with the Bush White House. It was made up, very likely in coordination with the White House itself.
I like the terminology here too at the top. This very likely. So when using relative, like, subjective or suggestive terms, a lot of people will do this and they will falsely claim that this is true when someone said, oh, you know, it's most likely, or it could have been, or should have been, or would have. And it's like, that's not evidence.
How about the gay frogs?
This is my favorite.
You remember the gay frogs? That is 100% my favorite conspiracy theory that turned out to be true. When Alex Jones said on air, they're turning the frickin' frogs gay, and then everybody made fun of him, and then he was totally right.
Wrong. So what he was saying is that, and I'm going to speculate on this because I remember watching the video once, and I want to say it was like within the week that it happened. I mean, it's so ludicrous, his idea that, I believe the story was that he thought the government was putting chemicals into the water purposely to turn people gay because it was turning frogs gay. Now, this is one of the sites here that this is 6 animals that change sexes when they are like a lot of reptiles, a lot and amphibians too, or some mostly reptiles. I guess I'll have to look at this, but there are quite a few species that when the environment affects them, like if they're in like a fully, an all male or all female, they will spontaneously switch gender. This is a natural thing. This is something. Oh, sorry, it's not natural. It's the trans agenda. Yeah, that's what it is. By the way, I have been a part of the trans agenda since I was a kid because I loved Transformers as a kid. I watched it obsessively. So apparently that makes me a part of the transgender agenda. Pesticide astrazine can turn male frogs into females. So this is actually where a chemical byproduct from runoff water, and it was an herbicide that applied annually in the United States on corn. And I believe, again, I don't know. I think this is the bullshit link that Alex Jones was referring to. I could be wrong, but the study showed that the chemical itself can exacerbate what the frogs can already do and basically turn them, the male frogs, into females. That again is not turning frogs gay. That is exacerbating their sexual change, which again is natural. And I'm also going to put in a scientific study here where, and this has been cited for a long time, but it talks about 450 different animal species worldwide that demonstrate and participate in same-sex rituals and family units. I'm just going to throw that in there because I'm sure there's somebody out there that's probably going to watch this and be like, well, it's not natural even if they are gay. I'm like, well, no, it actually is. And science proves you wrong again. But let me go back and let's see how far we can get my dogs like freaking out now.
Whatever Alex Jones has ever said in his life, it is simply a fact. They were turning the frickin' frogs gay.
They were not turning the frickin' frogs gay. They were exacerbating, again, the natural ability for amphibians or reptiles. Sorry, I'm trying to think of frogs. Frogs are reptiles, right? Are they classified as reptiles? I'm like starting to second guess myself now because they do lay eggs. But they have a natural inclination, again, to change sex under the right conditions.
There was a team of scientists from Yale that analyzed 21 ponds in suburban Connecticut.
This is the
actually not only were they turning the frogs gay, they were turning them trans. Estrogenic waste in the water in these ponds was turning the frogs hermaphroditic. So not only was Alex Jones
not hermaphroditic.
His crazy conspiracy theory true, it actually didn't go far enough. He was actually too modest in his commentary.
Oh, I gotta tell you, I think we're coming up on 45 minutes. I really was hoping to keep this bullshit to 30 minutes. My dog is starting to bark. I don't know what's got it in it, but I gotta go stop him. But anyway, if you've made it this far, as before, Mike Knowles is a complete liar. I'm going to go ahead and cite all the research. I got really excited there for a second that the study I read was the one he just quoted. I didn't get that far, but it's not. This is from Berkeley. But now that I know that there was a Yale one, which I'm going to assume based on the little he said about it, this might be referring to that exact study. Now I want to actually read the study. I don't see a link. I'm going to see if I can find it. But regardless, I'll put this down in there. And I will do my best to try to get through this by, I don't know, maybe the end of the week.